Hey Luke, so I figured this would be a little bit easier to do a voiceover recording of the paper. I did successfully print it out, but I realized I won't see you again till Tuesday, so I'll jot some notes down on the actual printed paper and I will give you some verbal feedback in this little video. One thing that has been so great is you have inspired me to learn about the Canvas feedback tools. So that's something I'm going to be working on. And you helped me figure out how to connect my office computer to the big printer in our building. So thank you for inspiring me to continue to improve. But let's take a look at your paper. One of the things that I noticed that you do specifically is there are some mini examples of vague language. So I'm going to dive right in. I'm going to read this paragraph and I'm going to pause and note. So The Great Gatsby, film directed by Baz Luhrmann, came out in 2013 and was based on the novel written by F. Scott Fitzgerald. In the novel, Fitzgerald did an outstanding job in using literary elements because there was an abundance of literary elements used to portray his point and greater meaning behind the plot of The Great Gatsby. So, one thing, I'm sorry about this random little box. I've been trying to experiment with giving feedback using Canvas, and I'm not an expert, so I'll wait till I'm an expert to help me. But so you do say he does an outstanding job, but how specific is outstanding job, right? To say a famous American author is outstanding is vague. How can you get more specific? He says he uses an abundance of literary elements, but would it be more specific to focus directly in on the elements that you discuss, right? So I see here, so obviously this is the introduction, and maybe I'm being nitpicky, which is why I said this is not necessary. But if you do want the harsh criticism, because you are already a wonderful writer, this is where it begins. You're opening with two fluff sentences. Obviously, you're introducing the author, the film, and the director, but look at how many words. How many words are in these sentences? What if you had a word limit on this paper? Say I said you only have 400 words, Luke. Could you rewrite this paper in less than 400 words? I want you to think about that. Say you have a word limit and you have to check all these boxes within your word limit. How would you change this paper? Luhrmann uses literary elements in his movie in order to give the same effect Fitzgerald has upon his audience. So who are the different audiences? You're addressing audience for Fitzgerald and Luhrmann. Luhrmann's audience is an audience that exists 80, almost 100 years, literally almost 100 years later. So something to consider. One of the biggest literary elements that were present in the film was symbolism. Each item that was a symbol not only meant something very important, Okay, so I'm going to touch on that again. Vague phrasing, okay, to give the same effect. Still, okay, to portray his point and greater meaning. So in an introduction, we want to introduce what that greater meaning is. Think about how strong an introduction would be if you dove right into what that was. So let's see. There were also a lot of flashbacks. Okay, flashback. If one thinks about it, since it is being told by Tobey Maguire, yes, so the entire story is told in flashback, which helps the audience gain a better understanding of himself, since he was a very mysterious character throughout a majority of the movie. These literary elements, along with certain film elements used, help heighten the overall narrative to the extent in The Great Gatsby. So, again, here in your introduction, you really haven't told us what that deeper meaning is. Think about literally what the moral of the story is in Great Gatsby. What's the moral? What's the message? And does your essay even introduce that? you've introduced the authors, the text titles, you've introduced two literary elements you're going to discuss. But in this introductory paragraph, have you really dug deeper, or are you still being very vague? Okay, there are numerous things, again, that's another example, numerous things that Great Gatsby is famous for. Okay, Great Gatsby is famous for what? What are those things? However, for the most important thing, the most famous thing, it should be remembered as is that this plot is an idea of social rejection and progressive movements of all kind, bootlegging for alcohol, equal rights, and gender norms. These are pretty huge concepts that you sort of brush over here. So think about that. You're being really vague. You're using a lot of fluff sentences, but then the depth, the deeper concepts are brushed over. They're only in parentheses. So let's talk about balance in the amount of sentences that you're using to discuss different concepts. It is shown through the use of numerous literary elements. Again, another vague phrase. It seems like The Great Gatsby was what America would look like during the time, a great utopian future in which everything is perfect. Okay, did I skip some stuff? Okay, so where did you get this phrasing? A great utopian future. Utopian future seems great at first, though a majority of the first half people are portrayed as very happy. So this concept is just not developed enough, right? You're talking about it's a utopia. It's just kind of vague. What do you mean by that? And you're saying it's a utopian future, but Great Gatsby takes place in the past. So that's another concept that's a little vague, not really developed. Let's see, there are 4 major symbols used throughout the whole movie, and the audience will constantly find themselves trying to figure out what they actually mean. So that's good that you present the fact that the audience struggles with the meaning behind these symbols. So I see you address the color green, the eyes of T.J. Eckleburg, the house, right? So the next 3 symbols play hand in hand with each other in portraying the narrative. The phone, symbol of bad news. So Gatsby's world, bootlegging during Prohibition, Tom's. I mean, really, in your discussing bootlegging and Prohibition, you almost missed a chance to incorporate some research to support the development of this. I mean, some of these key concepts are just stuck in parentheses, where those were really points that you're missing a chance to discuss. This paragraph, you do a much better job going into depth, a much better job examining the eyes. And that's because, look, you've included some ideas from Luhrmann that are building up that interpretation of the eyes and that relationship with Myrtle. I mean, even pearls are symbolic. So how can you reflect what you do here in this paragraph throughout the whole paper? So I know I'm getting closer to, and let's see, as you kind of drop off a little bit here, the elements of film. One thing that some of the audience members find detrimental was that sometimes some of the scenes were too fast-paced, which would hurt the plot. These fast-paced scenes, along with the 1920 accent, would be confusing to fully understand. So see how you don't truly conclude ever really touching on what you find is the deeper meaning, or if this is it is an effective story about the impossibility of recapturing the past and also the difficulty of altering one's future. So this is the first place where you've really given us what your interpretive claim is about the text overall. So I don't want to go on and on. I will jot some notes down on your essay itself, but these are the big things I want you to think about in this paper. And if you want to revise again, I would be happy to look at it, but those are the things that I want you to think about for your writing overall. So just to summarize again, some of the vague phrasing, using your introduction to get more narrow and specific. I challenge you to take 100 words out of this essay, but then develop it. And then ultimately, how can you create a thread that exists throughout the whole paper that really touches on what your argumentative claim is about, what the meaning or what your interpretive critique is about this film, right? What is your interpretation, and how, maybe if this is it, how do each symbol and flashbacks connect and develop this, and or take away from this? So anyways, Luke, thank you again for being patient, and I hope this feedback is helpful. I will have a hard copy of your paper for you in class. Have an awesome, awesome day.